Good morning. It's 9 a.m. Monday, July 11th, 2022. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First off is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve claims dated July 11th, 2022 in the amount of $551,159.44.
Move to approve.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
second by Doug. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is action to affirm an amendment to the GTSB State and Community Highway Safety Grant contract, increasing the impaired enforcement amount from $12,493 to $17,620 with Chief Deputy Jeff Mullen. Morning, Jeff.
Morning. GTSB approached us a while back that they had extra funds and we could have more money, basically more overtime hours. The amount will give us an extra 100 hours to use between now and the middle of September. We have no other obligations other than what we already have in our contract.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Santos.
Second.
Second by Doug. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you for applying for that, Jeff.
Thank you so much. Next up is items with Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furnace. Morning, Eric.
Morning.
First is discussion and possible action to approve an ordinance rezoning approximately 8.07 acres in Fruitland Township from A1 Agricultural District to R2 Residential District on the second of three readings.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Santos, second by Jeff.
Still haven't had any other further
No.
input on that, or?
Okay,
Nope, nothing.
very good. This is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Santos?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to accept the variance granted by the Muscatine County Board of Adjustment on July 8, 2022.
Board of Adjustment granted one variance last Friday. This was a variance request, a joint request from the DNR at the State Fish Hatchery there at Fairport and the Friends of the Fish Hatchery and the Historic Preservation Group. That group is working on bringing a educational structure, placing a structure out there that will memorialize one of the old pump houses. It was a historic structure that the DNR ultimately tore down. It's to bring educational opportunities about the ties of the old fish hatchery to the Muscatine mussel industry. So basically it'll be a structure that looks similar to the historic pump house that was tore down. It will have educational placards on the inside, a parking lot, ADA access, just a simple semi-open structure for people to come learn about the pearl button history and the Fairport hatchery ties to that. The best spot for it was a little closer to Highway 22. There was a flatter spot there that was only 32 feet from the road right away as opposed to the normally required 40 feet, so they'd applied for a variance. There'll be considerably less grading that'll have to go on there. It'll also keep the public and the tourists out of the working part of the actual fish hatchery and also away from the floodplain. So the Board of Adjustment gave them a variance to place this structure 32 feet from the property line instead of the required 40.
No sightline issues?
No, it still sits back considerably off the road and lower than the highway, so it doesn't create any issues with pulling onto the highway there.
I'll move the approval.
Second it.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is review 3 special use permits granted by the Muscatine County Board of Adjustment on July 8th, 2022.
Yep, 3 special use permits. I'll just kind of go through all 3 of them real quick. One was issued for a rural residence on North Mulberry, south of F70 for a rural residence special use permit. So that one was granted. It met all the criteria as far as separation distance, low CSR for the soil, that type of thing for one single family residence there. There was a special use permit for a seasonal recreational cottage site just off Highway 22 on Hudal Junction. This one is actually for a camper to be used as a seasonal recreational, so nothing is being built there. They'll be able to just install electrical and bring a camper in and out as needed, but it can be removed during flooding. That is one of the special permitted uses of the A1 district. And then finally, a special use permit was issued off the Highway 70 south of Nichols at 210th Street for a cell tower on some private farmland.
Eric, on the second one that you talked about for the variance with the recreational,
Special
vehicle-
use permit.
Special use permit, I'm sorry. Is it my understanding that there's two of them that are gonna go on there?
The request was for 2 campers for 2 seasonal recreational cottage sites, but our ordinance specifies that only 1 seasonal recreational cottage is allowed per platted lot, so the Board of Adjustment only clarified that it is for 1 seasonal recreational cottage site. There was discussion, and I'll let you know, there's nothing to stop, if they're there on a weekend and some friends wanna join them with their camper, they can do that very intermittently, but that camper can't be left on site. Additional electrical or septic cannot be connected for a second one. But it's just like, I could have people come out. to
Just
my
like going out,
property.
filling out a camper, but that's what I didn't understand. I wasn't aware that we even had something like that allowed
So,
that.
yeah, campers can be used as seasonal recreational cottages, but not all campers are seasonal recreational cottages. It gets a little murky. You can pull a camper in and out of these sites, and it doesn't necessarily qualify as a seasonal recreational cottage site, but if they wanna be able to unhook it, maybe build a small deck off the camper, leave it there the entire summer, install electrical connection or a wastewater holding tank, we make them go through the steps of having it recognized as a seasonal recreational cottage, as opposed to just a very intermittent camper.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they're reaching out, at least following the right process, I guess. It's just I didn't understand that was something that we were able to special variance on, but.
And I think this is a conversation that we should continue on, as these floodplain issues do not.
Well, it
go
said that
away.
they would remove it if it was in a floodplain, that's what I read through there. So,
Well, I
that's-
mean, that's a claim, the floodplain management ordinance does require, that if a camper is left more than 180 consecutive days, if the intent is for that to happen, then it has to actually be elevated, just like a framed cottage.
So how do you know if they move it one day on day 173?
So basically, the way that we can most easily police that is we won't allow them to have any permanent connections. Like, if you wanna leave a camper that you claim is going to be able to be moved, it has to be maintained registration.
Mhm.
The only electrical we'll allow is the quick disconnect camper plug-ins. We don't allow any permanent plumbing, like to a septic system.
See, that's what I was concerned more, that's the one that runs me the most, is how are they running their sewage system, and that's, again,
I think
not
that's, the-
understanding on it.
I think that's, our ordinance has a certain, and I think maybe that's something we need to revisit, because,
Especially if you're in a flood.
with all the work we're doing with the watershed and all these things,
Mm-hmm.
septic systems and floodplains don't make a lot of sense, because they're gonna go underwater. How are you gonna prevent that pollutant from getting into the waterways?
And-
I think now you allow holding tanks, but
Right.
again, how do you ensure that they don't flood and?
We're actually restricted by DNR wastewater, on-site wastewater regulations from putting in a conventional absorption system in the floodplain. You can't do it according to the code.
I'm sure you can.
And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So our zoning ordinance allows a seasonal recreational cottage in these areas still currently, but, and if it's
And
a
it's my
permanent
understand-
structure, we would require some sort of wastewater system, but then we can't put that system in the floodplain.
But there's a home there, right? I mean, that's the way I understood the way I was reading through that. Or there's not a home, because it's a 1.5 acre lot?
This was
That's
a
what I
lot
understood.
that previously had a cottage that was damaged after, I think, the last flood. It's been decommissioned to just like a storage shed, all the plumbing, it's not.
Okay, so there's no
cottage
plumbing
anymore.
there, okay, there's no septic drainage field or nothing there?
No,
Okay.
not anymore. So, and there really won't be moving forward.
But I think that's something we need to either, and I don't know the process, as we go back, ask the zoning board to go back and look at the,
Well, I'm surprised that they just run that through. I mean, there's not even any comments or anything. I mean, they just,
Well, because it was for a camper and they're not requesting a septic system and our ordinance at this
Allows
time
it.
still allows it.
Ordinance allows it, so that's the
I think
question.
it's something that's worthy of a discussion moving forward, particularly in some of these areas that we've discussed multiple times with the cost and the burden of keeping them open and passable. Some of our county roads serving these areas go underwater. Every year we spend thousands of dollars worth of rock, and our ordinance would allow continued development at the ends of some of these roads. And from a long-term planning standpoint, my question to you folks is, does that continue to make sense? Do you want me to work on coming up with some alternatives for that? We keep doing circles on some of these issues.
I just was asking because it seemed unusual that we were having that, that's all it was. I didn't realize all that other details on it. I think there's value in us reviewing that, providing some feedback, or maybe coming back to us and sharing what your thoughts or recommendations are. Obviously, we want people to go out and have recreational opportunities, it's right by the river, but then how do we police that, and how do we, also budget, knowing that if those roads are getting flooded? I think that'd be a conversation with Keith and Brian in regards to the long-term, viability of those things.
Yeah, and I think if you continue to allow electrical connections and wastewater at these cottages, you're
Well,
gonna make them.
there's electric
You'll
there.
make them too convenient to become homes. And
Oh,
so I think
that's
we
why I
need to
was
look at our
concerned.
ordinance and say,
That's where I was more
is that
concerned.
really what we wanna do? Do we want,
Well, they're asking for
I'm
multiple
fine
ones.
with people rolling something in that's self-contained and camping it on whatever they want to, but how permanent a structure do you want our ordinances to allow? Because, as you see, we fight it on every other avenue when we start dealing with it. Then all of a sudden, people want school buses to pick kids up there, and it's like, really? In a seasonal cottage?
I just had a question, so
Yeah.
again,
But I mean,
I don't wanna get too far off onto some of those, I understand, I think we should have a further discussion.
Yeah, I wanted to
Maybe come back with some
take the
input on it.
opportunity that this presented to remind you some of the issues. I mean, the reality is, we have
If there's a-
mailboxes, we have postal delivery in some of these areas, we have school buses.
There's infrastructure there, so I mean, that's the concern that you'd run into, and obviously if there's taxpayers that wanna, use it, it's difficult because they're gonna hear their opinion of why it still should be value added, but if there's a cost, I think there's definitely a discussion point, but
Well,
I
this
think
is,
I'd like to review that, I didn't understand how that works, I didn't even know we had.
there are a
that.
lot of things, we've had other, I'll mess this up, but unincorporated areas that are more town-like than they're rural. And we've had people that are fairly much demanding of service levels there, above what we would normally provide a rural residents. And, we talked about before, special assessment districts, all kinds of things to kinda, if we're gonna do that, do we wanna do that? And if
I
we
would be
do,
more open to something like
Are we
that.
gonna have those conversations about, yeah, we could provide a better road to that area, but it'll be a special assessment district,
Well,
because.
I mean, in a sense, they're basically putting a campground location, which isn't in a campground location.
Right,
It's really, and so they're not paying the fees, or they're not paying for any of those infrastructure costs, but
right.
I didn't wanna get off too much off of that, Eric, I appreciate it, so I just wanted to ask those questions, and obviously we have that in place, so.
I mean, is there anything specific you'd like me to bring back to you to continue this discussion? Or, I mean, yes, you're correct, Santos, there is structures there, there's a certain amount of private infrastructure installed, but my question is, do we wanna continue to allow additional assessed value to be put into the floodplain where it's subject to damage, eventually people stay there, they don't get out in time. Emergency services are called from time to time to get people out of these areas, because ultimately it falls back to my office to try to police how many days a year someone's living there.
Yeah.
And moving forward, do we wanna continue to allow permanent structures in some of these isolated areas that are, quite frankly, a danger to live in?
I would very much be concerned about any permanent structures. I think the concerns that I had was that we have existing infrastructure in place that is allowing those, connections like this. What my main concern was is when I was reading through this, request was, where does the existing sewage system go into a floodplain? Obviously, when we have the DNR issues, and so when I read that was an existing 1.5 acres, that's where my question came about, because I was concerned about, are we tying into the existing septic, or how they doing that, and.
Now, they have the portable holding tanks
Well-
that they can remove the waste waste from the
Yeah.
camper. But it just kind of brought up the conversation of, is this good long-term planning to still have?
And we know like the Corps has some of these leases too, some of these people, some of the other areas. And they're making significant changes in what they're allowing and what they're doing. And I think it's time for us to look at our ordinances to say, are we kind of mirroring where the direction that we need to be headed with these places?
If you wanna come back in a couple of weeks, provide us some feedback, I'd like to know who's there existing, so we can understand, do we have, 25 different existing, locations? What is the cost? We can start coming up with some more,
What do we got about-
quantifiable data to share why we would wanna go one way or the other, because I'm not gonna make a decision that quick, I just wanna share
Right,
with you.
no, I just wanted to know whether you get some direction if you wanna continue this
I
conversation.
think we should, like I said, I didn't understand that we had that, but that's just my opinion,
I agree.
Clarify this for me. You talked about the 180 days. Does that camper have to be removed from that site?
So, there's some different language in the zoning ordinance and the floodplain management ordinance. Floodplain management ordinance says that any camper that's going to be on site for more than 180 consecutive days has to be elevated.
Okay.
Just like a cabin.
Okay.
It must be, they must maintain current DOT registration on the camper. It can only utilize quick disconnect utilities, like a plug from an outlet for a camper. If they wish to have it be more permanent, it's gotta be elevated and then meet all the other floodplain, floodproofing, the electrical and that type of thing, but.
Yeah, because in some of the past floods that have occurred that have happened rapidly, shall I say, I know a number of cases where the owners of some of these campers, that camper had sat there for a substantial length of time, and as the water was coming up, and it came quickly, there was a narrow window of time to get these removed, and the camper was not roadworthy.
Right.
Tires are been sitting there for a number of years. Tires are all rotted off of it, and they couldn't get it out. The floodwater came up, and it went rolling to wherever it went rolling to, and just creates a tremendous mess.
Yeah.
Tremendous mess, and I would agree. You cannot allow these to become to a point where you can't move them in a short period of time, and that comes with moving them periodically.
But, the Board of Adjustment's doing that because we have a policy in place. So obviously, I think if we were
Yeah,
to review those.
we're doing
things-
everything we can within the constraints of our ordinance. We've started requiring as part of the application, a checklist where they'll initial the things that they will promise to do, maintain it in roadworthy condition, maintain registration, keep us notified of their permanent legal residence elsewhere, but, that's still only as good as.
So if they don't do it, we can't do much about it.
We're trying to get them to commit to these things, but the ordinance, it still becomes an enforcement issue.
Is there anything, and I'm just spitballing here, connecting compliance with these things that we could do to insurability?
I don't know that I could answer that question.
And maybe that's more of a long-term thought. Also, when there's a mess like this, Scott, who cleans it up?
Well, I can't answer that question, and where's it?
Louisa County.
Or eventually probably down to Shreveport, but,
Yeah.
There's no way to hold these folks liable.
I don't know, because it just takes off through the timber, and those aluminum, lightly framed built units, they just get ripped to pieces.
Yeah.
And wherever they end up laying is where they end up laying, basically.
Yeah, and it's not always downstream of the river. During the '08 flood out around Hinkeyville, the adjoining farmers had mobile homes and trailers and campers 300 yards out into their field.
Yeah, floated out in the current.
And you can just about picture what happened to the sewer connection. It was ripped away and all that sewage went into the floodwater. Debris is scattered over miles.
Do we have LiDAR for all that areas in there, don't we? Wouldn't Keith have all that to know what the elevations of everything's out there?
Well, we have some 2-foot contours on our, I don't know how recent those are that are on information viewer, but there's probably more recent.
We should have elevations of those roads too, so we would identify areas that would be more
They
concerning.
probably have elevations. I don't wanna speak.
So, we should, maybe when we get that information, we can reach out to Keith. I'd like to see that information so it addresses if we are really in areas that we could discuss more concerning areas ideally first, and then maybe we review this policy and this ordinance long-term. 'cause I think it's an issue.
Doesn't the FEMA flood maps, I look at those all the time, I'm trying to think, they have all the elevation data on them, don't
It
they?
depends if it's a detailed study area or not. It'll show the base flood elevation, cross sections on some.
But if we
waterways
have the
below that.
roads access into that, that should be close enough.
Yeah.
So to me, that'd be enough, but
So,
apologize for going too far into this.
no, I wanted some, if there's some consensus in bringing back some more numbers and some possible solutions to look at. Obviously, you would then need to give some direction when then the zoning commission would work with me on if there is a desire to change any of the ordinance or address anything.
Well, I will say, and this kind of goes, Eric and I've had this conversation with the lower Cedar watershed. These are exactly the kinds of areas and the issues that the watershed approach is trying to address. And in Iowa, if we don't start taking aggressive steps around them, we're gonna be forced to federally. Because they're trying to clean these waterways up. Because again, when you have these flood events and all the things that probably shouldn't be in flood-prone areas washing down the river, it's causing problems elsewhere.
And that's why if you have elevations of certain areas
Right.
of roads, then we can identify that better. That's why I'd like
Yeah.
to have you come back. Talk about the elevations. We know what areas are gonna be the main areas if we were to flood. Who's gonna get hit first? And then we can start maybe some discussions around that ordinance change.
And this is why I did have the consultant look several of our areas on our lower Cedar watershed comprehensive plan is areas of concern that we may look at doing something with, so that they're identified in our mitigation plan. So if grant money becomes available, we've identified them, but
I mean, you could go down there and just look at the railroad tracks and look at how high that is comparatively to these homes or to some of these areas. And I mean, that right there tells you, the railroad already realizes that they're putting themselves up there and they're elevating themselves so high. Ideally, we can look at some of those pieces, but I think if you wanna come back here in another, 2 months maybe? Okay.
I'll just, however long it takes me to get some stuff together, but I'll come back.
I'd like to suggest Eric make a list of numerous things in the ordinance you'd like to address so that it can be more comprehensive and we can figure out a path forward, because
There's a couple things.
several issues.
Yeah. So I don't think we're quite needing to completely revisit or redo our whole zoning ordinance. But there's some things that are outdated that maybe I'll bring it all back to you at the same time. Maybe things that, some of them aren't flood related, but need to be updated as well, so we can maybe, when we call the zoning commission in to look at some recommended amendments, we can deal with several issues at once.
Well, I think it'd be best to do more preventative than reactive on these things, so. Okay,
I agree.
thank you.
Okay, that was just a review item. So next up is discussion of possible action authorizing the chair to sign a request for release of funds and certification to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, requesting the release of CDBG funds to be used for the FEMA acquisition project.
Yep, so this is one more of several steps in getting our hands on CDBG funding that will provide our local match dollars for the buyouts that we're still working through with FEMA. Bi-State was in charge of making an application to economic development on our behalf. We were notified that we are going to be receiving that money. I made a follow-up call to Bi-State, like, where is the money? And was told, well, we have to actually make a formal request for release of those funds, so that's what's in front of you now, that would release the funds to us so that we can actually utilize it or get reimbursed. We've already spent the money out of our budgeted money for the Sweetland Road property. This will reimburse us for our local share and provide the money for our local share for one additional property.
There was that other property I
Yep.
recall, yeah. And that was in one of these areas that we,
It's out along the Pike Run area,
Yeah.
22 West, yeah.
okay,
I'll make a motion to approve.
now second.
Motion by Santos, second by Jeff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And next is action authorizing final acceptance of the county attorney's office remodel project.
So basically, everything is finished over there. There's a couple items that Mike Nolan and I believe should be handled under warranty items. It's some work that was already finished. And he's come back and fixed a couple things. There's a motion detector light switch in one of the bathrooms not functioning properly. He's advised me he has the new switch to replace it. He's waiting on a couple flooring transition strips to replace some that aren't holding. But this is work that's already been completed under his contract. And then there's just a piece of vinyl baseboard trim that needs to be re-glued back to a corner. But I believe it would be appropriate to accept final completion of the project and issue that. We've got the check waiting. We just wanted to bring it in front of you, or we needed to actually to get your final acceptance on it.
So
I'll second.
I got a motion by Jeff.
Nathan.
Motion by Nathan, second by Jeff.
Yep.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Anything else?
I believe that's it.
Very good, thank you so much. Next up is items with Second Deputy Auditor Susan Schneider.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Basically, I'm here to find out if, we are going to, disallow previously approved homesteads and military credits for item A. These
Okay,
were
let me read item A. Discussion of possible action to disallow previously approved homestead and military credits.
And these were either transfers of property or other items where the credit is no longer valid, correct?
Correct, correct.
So I'll move the approval of that.
I had a question on this. How do we verify that? When you say disallow,
We verify, if the address has changed, or, we know that they purchased another property in the county but have not signed up for it, that will be on the list. But mostly address changing.
okay,
And then, the individual, once they get the letter, if they say, no, we're still residing there, then we'll put it back on.
so they have an opportunity
They
to,
have an opportunity to contact us and
okay,
put it on.
perfect.
With that, I've got a motion by Jeff, a second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion of possible action to allow new 2022 homestead tax credit and/or military tax exemption applications, except those recommended to be disallowed by the assessor's office.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Nathan.
Can I say something on that one?
Yeah.
Am I interrupting?
No,
No, no.
I'm sorry, Susan.
You're fine.
On the last page of that disallowed one, there was a property that we had, and I think this is where I'm supposed to address this, Nancy, if I'm not wrong. In 2019, there was a fire, and I contacted the city of Muscatine to see what was going on, because no permits have been issued, no work has been on it. The individual moved out, and the code of Iowa says that we're supposed to leave the homestead on unless, like a fire, let me reword that. To leave the homestead on, even if there's a fire, to give that person, a chance to get back in there. But this was 2019, they haven't done any work on that place. And we're recommending to the board to disallow that.
Which
But
property is that?
The very last page,
1819 Lucas Street.
16, Sampson, I believe.
2160, which one did you say, Sue?
It says, her mailing address is the 2016 Sampson, but you have
Right.
1819 Lucas Street on there.
Yes. We'll put a note in our pricing program to keep an eye on it, and if we see them get a permit, then we'll investigate it more and have them re-sign if they move back in.
Okay, so, and that's
I'm fine with that.
1819 Lucas Street?
Well,
Yes.
no one's living there, right?
Yeah, I think I know which property you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Okay,
Okay. I've got a motion by Jeff, a second by Nathan on this issue. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. Next is discussion of possible action to approve/deny 2022 disabled veteran homestead tax and credit applications as recommended by the Muscatine County Assessor's Office.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes. Anything other to add?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Next is action to accept the following reports. First is County Auditor's Report of Fees Collected for the quarter ending June 30th, 2022, in the amount of $2,763.18.
Move to approve.
Motion by Jeff. Second. Second by Doug. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is County Treasurer's Report of Fees Collected for the quarter ending June 30th, 2022, in the amount of $164,279.40.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Amy, are you seeing any move on interest rates on your?
Yes, I'm up over 1% now, so it's
Yeah,
good.
I suspect that that would be probably the one bright spot of the rates we've seen. Okay, thank you.
Next up is County Recorder's Report of Fees Collected for the quarter ending June 30th, 2022, in the amount of $82,760.25.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is County Sheriff's Office, Civil Department's Report of Fees collected for the quarter ending June 30th, 2022, in the amount of $36,077.65.
Move to approve.
Motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Doug. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the June 27th, 2022 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Motion
Second.
by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Correspondence, Jeff?
Nothing to note.
Nathan?
Only thing I have to note is I think we all got a nice letter from Charlotte Schaefer thanking us for the county's participation in the Mulberry Corridor Revitalization Project, if I got that right.
Okay. That's it?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be correct.
I had that same, Santos?
On the 629, we had that revolving loan or levy project, update that we had over at the Merrill. I have my, let me look at that list real quick. I think put the dates on there.
Oh, sorry.
On 7/6, I had a focus group on a revolving loan potential fund that we're gonna look at with the community foundation. It was kind of reviewing the revolving loan that they utilize in Iowa City. Very interesting update of how they do that with the University of Iowa and utilizing that, and they've processed about $11 million through that since its inception, and it's a really good program from what I understood in reviewing it. I think long term it would be something viable for Muscatine, but again, it was just an update and sharing how they utilized it. Then on 7/7, I had a update going through with the executive director for We Lead with his goals, and that's all I had for correspondence.
Okay. Doug?
Same one you and Nathan had, that's all I had,
Okay.
Scott.
Okay. Committee reports, Jeff?
Yeah, I did attend the levy, as Santos, and I think it was really good. They had Brian Bros from, Klinger and Associates kind of go through the engineering update and where everything was to date. So making progress, but I don't remember when they thought construction might consider, it's still a year or two out, right?
About a year is what we're really,
Yeah.
right. Some of the archaeological stuff that we were working through, getting the mussels, I mean, there's so much stuff that
Yeah.
SHPO's got us on, but I would feel we're a lot closer than what we were, you know?
Yeah.
And again, part of the thing that we've challenged with them is knowing, you know, we have certain timelines that we need to meet with the dollars that we're spending. So, you know, there's obviously a lot of discussion, but we're getting into a lot of the construction of what it's gonna look like. How does it need to go? Where does this dirt need to go or sand need to go? Where are we gonna store it at? A lot of further discussions on those pieces that
Yeah,
we're
I think
having
that
with them.
one of the things to me was, you know, we'd always on the northern part, it was like at the 500 year plus 3 feet of freeboard.
Yeah.
And basically, Corps said you're not gonna get that done on the whole levee. But it looks like they're gonna get 100 year plus 4 feet of freeboard, which is incredibly close to 500 plus 3 feet of freeboard. So I think we're pretty happy about that as a process, so.
It was really kind of a nice setup, and I don't know if we would ever be able to share that, but what the simulated views are is when the levee breaches, where the area and the waters would go to, and how fast it would go. You don't really think about those things until we really get a flood, change, but that modeling is really a good system that we're utilizing on that.
Well, and the other thing that people I think don't realize is that just because that part of the river is downstream doesn't mean that it won't flow back up the island. A lot of the parts of the island are lower upstream.
Oh, yeah.
So if the levee is breached, it'll come down and then go back up and flood, well, depending on how high it gets, potentially any part of the island.
Yeah. One of the things that I think longer term is, more and more communities along the river are required by the DNR for their city separation systems. So as more communities build, there's less water retainage in the city. So now it's gonna go further out. When you have a city separation, so now all the drain water that's going out in the streets is going to the river. So you think about everything upriver, in a sense, our river's gonna continue to increase and the levels are gonna go higher. And if we don't look at that in a long term, which, he didn't really talk a lot about that, which I kind of hit him up on later and wanting to get more information on that, because the river's gonna increase as long as more and more communities, all the way up to Minnesota, you're gonna see those waters continue to increase. So this is an investment, in my view, that needs to be done, and rather be, hey, glad we did that type of conversation.
I think the Corps of Engineers indicated a number of years ago in a meeting.
And that's
they-
DNR required.
Yeah.
That's what the city's been doing here. That's why it's been taking it. And it's not till, it's like 2028, I think.
Yeah.
that needs to be
The Corps of Engineers is actually putting together a holistic study of the entire Mississippi Valley watershed like that with all the hydrology, which should be a great asset to communities like us long-term, once we get that data so that we can utilize it. But I think you're exactly right, Santos. Muscatine is much further ahead than most communities. They're gonna
Clinton
be,
is not even started.
they're gonna face these major financing issues as they separate their stormwater and sanitary sewer systems, but all that means is that stormwater's going somewhere.
Yep. And that's, you think longer term, think about everything across the tributaries that come into the Mississippi.
Well, we saw it, Keith, you remind me back in, when they had the problem in Cedar Rapids, what was it, 2008? And then, you kinda said we went from, used to see about the crest about 3 days from Cedar Rapids to us, and now it's 18 hours? I think you'd said, so that's what happens when they fix those issues upstream from you. It just causes more and faster water down here. So we have to be prepared for it.
Anyway, it was a good presentation, so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna take it
Yeah.
away from you. So,
That's it for me.
Yeah, and another thing that your point is well taken on the amount of construction and paving and so on and so forth, but I think a bigger piece of the puzzle is, quite honestly, and it's not talked about very much, and that is the thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of pattern tiling that are done and have been done in this last decade and the decade before, and it's gonna continue going forward, and how quickly that water comes out of that ground and is dispersed coming down the waterways that feed to, it all ends up into a major river system. And so you get that bounce. So.
you get rains like what we just had this last week. It was
Right.
like 3
Pretty
inches in
evident.
3 hours.
Yeah,
Pretty
Like,
evident.
wow.
it's just another piece to the puzzle,
And
that's
then
what it is.
I hear people were calling about basements getting flooded and, and like, well, where's that water going? And a lot of the engineers don't, it's even the city, they don't design when you start seeing those types, they're not designed for that kind of systems.
Yeah.
They don't sit there and say, oh, we're gonna put in 36-inch, sewer systems.
Well, I think when they look at water retention, they look at 4 inches in 24 hours, not in a couple hours, right? They don't look at that kind of downforce.
Well, I was at the Come and Go on Friday, and it's just I was paying, the heavens opened up, and it sounded like the roof was getting beaten in. And so I thought, well, this is only gonna last 5 minutes. This doesn't have that kind of. 45 minutes of waiting inside the gas station later, I said, screw it.
Had lunch and everything.
Yeah, even though, I ran to the car, and even though folks outside were, almost up, more than half their hubcap at the corner of 5th and, or Cedar and 5th. Yeah, it's nuts.
Good thing they had free refills on the soft
Oh,
drinks.
boy. And bathrooms.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
committee reports, Nathan?
Uh,
Did you already?
Oh,
cover
I don't think I did. So I had the, I don't know if we count the cash counts, we all did those. Also, I had the, I wrote it down on the sheet, what date. Thank you, sir. I had the Muscatine Valley Workforce Authority CEO meeting on the 28th of June.
Okay, very good, thank you. I just had the, on Wednesday the 29th, I just had the
What'd I say?
levy stakeholder meeting that I attended. Santos?
On July 5th, I had the Housing Council, the update what they were gonna be doing with the downtown, housing revitalization, kind of updating that they were going to, have another meeting with city council, provided the updates that they were gonna do. My understanding is they did have that, discussion with the housing council. And then again, just teaming up with, sharing what they're doing with MPW, the roads, the housing, how much dollars we're getting, and so that was what was the main discussion in, the meeting that we had for housing on July 5th.
Okay, Doug?
Had no committees. We did, however, on the weekend of the 4th, we were supposed to have a race, and it got rained out. It was the Star Spangled Battle, and we had it last Saturday, and it was good turnout. We had a huge field of cars. A lot of the racetracks around us had canceled on Friday, so we picked up a lot of cars, and we had a huge crowd. And I just want to remind everybody, this Sunday, July 17th, is the fair parade in West Liberty. You said 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that's start time.
And 1 o'clock to get
It's lined
set
up.
up, and that'll be at the fairgrounds.
And then the fair starts on Wednesday, is that correct?
Yes, the 20th.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next up is items with the administration office. First is discussion of possible action to approve resolution 07112201, authorizing and approving a loan agreement and providing for the issuance of a $3,350,000 general obligation levy improvement note and providing for the levy of taxes to pay the same.
This is the money that when we set the budget for the current fiscal year, this is the funds that we slated to borrow. So this is just following through on that process.
And again, I mean, just kind of reinforcing why we had that levy update kind of identifies, in my opinion, a lot of the need for this, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Oh, you got something, I'll second.
Santos made a motion, Jeff's got the second on it. This is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Santos?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is discussion of possible action to approve and authorize the chair to sign a county engineer employment contract and agreement with Brian Prochaski.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nathan, second by Jeff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion of possible action to approve a hiring request, county engineer's office.
The hiring process form and a memo, excuse me, a memo from Keith, justifying why he wants to hire above minimum is included in your packet, and I've reviewed it, and I concur with what he's requesting.
I only had one question on that now. Am I gonna be safe driving through Cedar County?
You might want to avoid Cedar County. The intent with this is if and when this person becomes a licensed engineer, they would be they would move into an assistant county engineer position, which is 1 grade higher.
I'll move the approval.
So my question, is then this position that we're opening or that we're doing is to replace Brian's position?
Yes.
Okay, so then would we have any openings there or are we good already?
Well,
Would this position be replacing Brian's
Well-
and then after that, would we be good?
Well,
Essentially, it's replacing Brian.
Okay,
This person's gonna come in
so then in a sense, he would be
here.
gradually moved up to that position.
It's just we've treated all of our licensed people as available to be grade 17. And it's assumed that he's gonna go ahead and
right.
get his license here.
Okay.
And as far as positions, I mean, we still have not hired the fleet, replaced the fleet manager. We have a person acting in that position, but basically when I go, we'll be clearly back to a vacancy. Does that answer it?
Yes, I didn't realize that we were also had a fleet manager role needed. I didn't know that, so, but I understand what his position is and what that role is, so.
Yeah, Mike Seawright retired in
Mark?
March.
Yeah.
And we have somebody acting in that role, and then once Brian's in place, he'll make a decision
About that position.
what he wants to do about that
Yeah.
position, yeah.
I understand.
That's the-
Okay,
That's the intent.
all right, so Jeff made a motion.
I got a motion by Jeff.
I'll make a second.
I got a second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is discussion and possible action to increase the medical examiner's annual stipend.
So, Dr. Weiss has served as our medical examiner for 6 years. The original stipend that you guys approved was $4,800 a year, or $400 a month. And that was based on an estimate of 80 cases at $60 an hour, which is a huge bargain relative to what other counties are paying. I went and took a look at the stats. This year so far, we've had 137 deaths. Last year, we had 331, and the year before that, 376. So we're clearly saving a huge amount of money, but I would like to see us bump his stipend up to $500 a month. So it'd be an extra $1,200 a year, it'd be $6,000 for the year.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Santos, second by Jeff.
I just have one question. Is he gonna continue in that role even though he's retiring as a
Yes,
doctor?
yes, he is going to continue for the time being.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And we thank him for that.
Absolutely.
I
Alright.
thank him frequently for that. And we're fortunate to have the medical examiner investigator system that we use that works very well.
Yeah.
Amen. I speak with county supervisors frequently, and this is one of the areas that they really, really struggle with. And I have always had great comfort that it's in good care here in Muscatine County. And it's because of the individuals we have doing it for us. They take great care for us. Thank you.
Okay. Got a motion by Santos, second by Jeff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is review the health/dental fund balance as of June 30, 2022.
And that's just for your information, there's spreadsheets in your packet that shows how we did for the last fiscal year. Our fund balance did grow slightly. We're seeing just insane increases in especially in medication costs. But fortunately, knock on wood, we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it rolled through pretty well, didn't it? Okay, very good. Anything other, Nancy?
I have nothing else.
Thank you. Next is receive information from county employees. Do I have any county employees that would like to address the board?
Real quick, Scott, I forgot to mention something. On the 28th, I participated in a water quality forum that was hosted by the Iowa League of Women Voters. It was myself and Corey McCoy from the head of the water section of the DNR and Brian Butler from MPW, and we talked about local water quality issues, and specifically about polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, that had recently been identified in some of the well water, particularly down on Camera Trailer Park area. If you get any calls, I can get a hold of the presentation that Corey from the DNR did on PFAS specifically. We fielded a few of them, some more questions on those substances, what they are. There's some EPA guideline changes as far as the levels. It's something that all jurisdictions are struggling to get around now because the levels that the EPA are establishing as acceptable are so low that they're hard to even test for at this point. Previous to the meeting, the level was like at 70, and the camera water, for example, was below that, but now the levels have been lowered, and so it's not a huge concern yet at this point. It's kind of a wait and see what the EPA does on these substances. PFAS is generally associated with industrial chemicals. Firefighting foams are a known identified source of these PFAS. Certain garments and coatings like Teflon and Gore-Tex have been shown to release PFAS into they're known as a forever chemical. They don't break down and go away in the water or the soil. So if you get any questions about, as a result of that forum, I can get a hold of presentations from both Brian Butler on what MP&W is doing about it and the DNR. So
Can you send me that presentation?
yeah, I don't have it, but I'll get it from Corey. He did a PowerPoint, Brian had a PowerPoint, then I just went over our local private well testing program and the grant. And
Yeah, it was, I attended that event. It was very interesting, but as per usual, I think there were more questions raised than answers given. You know, typically, you know, they've issued a health, what do they call it, a health advisory now for PFAS, and at a very low level. They significantly dropped. It kind of reminds me of what they did with the air quality regulations a number of years ago. And they don't really have a solution. That's the problem, is there's no solution because, you know, there are mitigation strategies, right, where you can remove it, but then you concentrate it, and that is a bigger problem than it at the lower level. So it'll be interesting to see where science goes on this one.
Well, I mean, you can purge well certain things, type things that you can do, but still, you're still having to, you're concentrating.
Yeah, which is worse.
Well, it's kind of
Yeah.
like the same problem with the levees, you know, you get the water off one area and it just funnels into the rest.
Yeah, so anyway, but I think as somebody said, man created this problem, we'll solve it. She was just gonna take some brains for a while. Okay,
Was the DNR there by chance at that meeting?
he attended virtually, he did his presentation virtually. Corey did.
yeah, Corey.
It's interesting that the EPA would have that, but, yeah, I'd like to see that presentation if you get time. Thank you.
Okay. Brian, you wish to address?
Yes, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to give a quick construction project update. We have a few things going on right now. The 171st Street, the paving project out there. Last week, our contractor was pretty busy prepping for paving. Not much paving has happened, mostly due to weather and just some site conditions. This week, they hope to pave. I don't know what this morning's rain would have done to it, though, so we will see. The York Ave Bridge up by Walcott, that is moving along very well. The substructure to the bridge is completed, and this week they will continue to work on the bridge deck. Hopefully we can potentially get a bridge deck pour late this month, hopefully. An update for some projects that haven't started yet. The Call 22, that's our local pipe culvert maintenance project. PCI has that. They hope to be in next week, and they plan to begin on Cranston Ave. And then the seal coat, LL Pelling has that project. Currently, they're thinking that they could potentially be here late next week. Really depends on the weather.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
that's all I have for it.
Brian, while you're up there, what are we doing on Moscow Road? Are we doing anything over there by that bridge?
We are not. That is the state's bridge, actually. I don't know the full extent of their project, but I do know it includes a bridge deck overlay.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And on 171st Street, I know I think I asked you a couple weeks back of expected timelines. Do you think that we're still gonna have concerns about the outage for the SSAB in late August? And their timing with that?
if the weather can be decent, I think we stand a good chance to to complete, sometime in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other county employees wish to address? Seeing none. Receive comments from the public. Is there anyone in the public that would wish to address the board currently? Seeing no one. It is 9:55, and we are adjourned. Thank you.